So my name is Liadh Fitzgerald, as Catalina said, and I am the CEO of Women's Health Network. We will get to all of that in a moment. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen. As Catalina said, please do ask any questions as we're going along. We can pause and take them. I know that there's quite a few of you actually watching live online, so please forward those questions in as well, and we will get to as many of them as we can. So this is Leadership Week. I'm so thrilled to be working with the IAPC&M today and to be beginning this wonderful afternoon for you. And we're going to look at elevating standards of care through clinical coaching. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that word clinical and how it felt as a leader to put it together with coaching. But I think the invitation is always there for anybody watching this to superimpose yourself, superimpose your business, superimpose your plans into what I'm talking about and see if you can find yourself in there. Because if you are coming along to look at information on International Leadership Day, that there's something inside you that is saying, I want to be a leader. You've probably seen an area of your work or you've seen something that you feel can be done better. And maybe something is beginning to light inside you that is saying, I can maybe lead forward in this space. So I'm going to talk you through a little bit about, I suppose, how I came into the role of leadership, what it felt like. It doesn't always feel gorgeous, let me put it like that. But by God, when you break through the crunchy bits, it can feel phenomenal. And you become pretty much unstoppable with regards to what you want to lead. But we will get to all of that. For me, it's about responsibility. Leadership is about responsibility. So I think these are some of the words that we'll maybe keep in mind as we're going through it. So I got a lovely introduction there. I probably don't need to say any more whatsoever, but I'm the CEO and founder of Women's Health Network, and we are Europe's leading non-medical providers for women's health practitioners, coaches and therapists. We have some wonderful training programs. I'll very briefly call out two of them at the end of our day today. We're proud academic partners with the Institute for Functional Medicine, which is one of the big ticks that I had in front of myself when I decided that I was going to lead a change in how women are supported. And becoming academic partners with a global and highly respected institute was profound and very, very humbling in one sense as well. We're creators of Women's Health Clinical Coaching Program. You'll see the TM after it. We have put that in for trademark, WHN Clinical Coaching. And I will get to that clinical word, as I said, a little bit later to show you a little bit about that journey into leadership, so to speak. But before that, I suppose we can't get to any level of change, or we can't shift any paradigms until we can understand what are leaders. So before I get into the story of clinical coaching, I want to talk to you a little bit about leadership itself, okay? And I want you always to see, where do you see yourself in here? So leaders are visionary, okay? They bring compelling ideas to life. They inspire and motivate, and I hope that you will feel some inspiration at the end of today. They foster a positive culture by empowering others. They lead by example with integrity is key here. They drive and manage change. They push against the wind, so hard against the wind sometimes, and they believe in a if nothing can fail philosophy. I think the end one there for me is one of the ones that is most profound, because often I think in any space of work, we feel sometimes that we're contained, and we feel if I push the boundaries here, I'm going to push up against something that's going to tell me I've reached my outer limit. I'm going to push up against something that's going to make me feel uncomfortable. But if I can change my mindset around that and say to myself, if nothing can fail, for me as a leader, what could I achieve? And I'm always looking at that end person, the person I'm here to serve. If nothing could fail for me as a leader, what can I achieve for the person I want to serve? So the if nothing can fail philosophy is one that really helps get us outside those crunchy boundaries. We're coaches. We know everything about brainstorming and imagining and forward focusing and where could I be? Where could this be? How do I get from here to there? And bringing in a if nothing can fail philosophy will help you imagine what it might look like. Because leadership is not for the faint-hearted, but it's possible for all of us. Here's my top list. If Because I think a lot of times we don't work as a team sometimes. A lot of times we begin our working life as coaches or practitioners or whatever it is that we are, we begin it really often by ourselves. Now, for some of us, we are going to be part of a team, we're going to be part of an organization, we're going to be part of a collective, we'll say, but for some of us, we're by ourselves. So these are the top ones that I think most leaders that I have known, most leaders that begin as that sole lone leader, these are some of the top things that I would see in them. They're visionary. They are bringing compelling ideas to life. And I have the word compelling written inside here because the ideas that light us with a bit of fire are the ones that push us over our comfort zones and the ones that push us into leadership. So they're often really compelling. They're often ones that are big, big ideas. And pushing against the wind is another one because as leaders, when you're leading, you're trying to make change and making change in an existing paradigm can really feel tricky. Doors get closed in your face and opportunities disappear when you start talking about your values and your beliefs and what it is you're trying to do. But if you have the ability to buffer it and push against that wind, then you're going up that ladder of leadership all the time. You're elevating yourself. You're stepping into the shoes of that CEO mindset. And they believe in the nothing can fail philosophy. And then you can hear from my accent that I'm Irish, so we'll throw one more in for the bit of luck. They're always a step ahead, even a step ahead of themselves. So if you're a true leader, and you don't have to be in this massive organization, I'm bringing you to leading within your business. You want to stand, I think in the world of coaching, there's so much noise at the moment. There's a lot of online AI. Where do we get lost? We get lost amongst it all. But if we can be a step ahead of ourselves and a step ahead of our own thinking, excuse me, we can begin to elevate ourselves above that noise. So even if you are working by yourself, I want you to think about how can I lead in this business, in the occupation I've chosen for myself? How can I lead? Where is the gap that I can lead from? Excuse me. I'm just recovering from laryngitis, so excuse a few coughs. I do have my water with me. So where does leadership begin? And this is all going to lead into, I'm going to tell you a quick story about myself and it's going to lead into our clinical coaching because I know that's what you're here for. So leadership, what informs this rise? Is it accidental or purpose? I think we're always told that, people are born leaders and, we all know the people we went to school with or college with or have worked with who we could say that, yeah, they're a born leader. But actually, predominantly, leaders are actually made. So we can be born or we can be made. I can tell you for nothing, I'm not a born leader by any stretch of the imagination. As we discovered at the beginning, I wanted to be a romance writer. I'm not a born leader in the area of business, but I have become one. Okay. And that is through, I suppose, things like experience, education, intentional development. Um, but not just that, it has to come from somewhere. There has to be a fire, there has to be a reason for us to step into these leadership roles. So what informs the rise? Is it accidental or is it purposeful? It's never accidental, okay? It's generally purposeful. When you look back, you realize it's not accidental. You might have come across the world of the sphere that you're in at the moment that makes you a leader or calls upon you to be a leader, but that's not accidental. You've been led in there somehow. Um, for myself, it has always been about women, okay? Always across the board. So I'll just bring you there a little bit because that'll ease us into women's health clinical coaching. So I suppose growing up, I believed that I was going to work somehow either with women going through issues with domestic violence, maybe sexual exploitation. Um, I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I knew that there was this drive in me to work with women, whatever that might look like. I didn't go down the route of clinical psychotherapy or anything like that. I did go down the route of studying functional medicine and of studying physiology, of course, with that, and of studying nutrition and coaching and lifestyle medicine, the whole lot of it. And through that, that was the lens where I could see my leadership emerging. And there was a very, very strong reason why. Okay. The body, the female body became the lens for me. Okay. And I suppose when we think about the female body, women, the bodies in general, but we can carry our story within our physiology. And what I mean by that is that stress and our stress response, we can see it physiologically. Hormone dysregulation, we can see this all, we can see this through physiology. And symptoms speak, our bodies speak to us. But what happens is the systems that are supposed to support women when their bodies are speaking, those systems are missing, or those systems are misaligned to what it is that women truly need to support them going through. Anything from puberty to menstrual disorders, to fertility challenges, to pregnancy issues, to gynae disorders, to perimenopause, menopause, and longevity beyond. We experience so much, and yet our bodies talk so much when there's dysfunction and disarray. We've maybe missed periods, maybe we're going into perimenopause early, maybe we cannot get pregnant, maybe our menopause symptoms are horrific. And the systems in place to support us through that are missing. Now, that is where my fire began. And that is where leadership within me was born, because I felt this huge responsibility towards women to support them when the systems had let them down. Okay. So I became so it became very clear to me, and I would love you again to superimpose yourself into this idea. What becomes clear to you within your business? Because it became very clear to me very quickly that women needed better support. That turned into a conviction. I was like, women need better support. How can I help? How can I support better? In time, that turned into a conviction. Not only do we need support, but the support we're getting isn't good enough. The support we're getting isn't good enough, so now I need to make a change within that support. So this elevated my thought processes. It elevated how I approach situations. It elevated my thinking. And it began that process of, if nothing could fail, what could I create, or what could I bring to the table that will support women, girls and women across the board during that life cycle of health that isn't there already? And how am I going to crack through the system that's there already so that I can say, knock, knock, open wide, let me come in, because there is a system issue here. Women aren't being supported. There's a better way to do this. Now, those doors open, I mean, knock, knock 10 times before maybe there might be a clink. But this leads to leadership. Okay. I had got clarity. With that, it turned to conviction. It elevated my thoughts on what was possible, and it led to leadership. And I call that process cell, which is ironic because everything I do is down to that cell level, that physiological cell level for women. But this is, I suppose, the pathway of leadership. You get clarity on something that you feel you need to support. You get clarity on where there is a gap or where there's an issue. This leads to a conviction, which will elevate your approach. And by elevating your approach, you're stepping into that leadership role. Okay. It's not easy. And I'll come to something in a minute. So basically, when systems don't listen, leadership emerges. And for women's health, now we can superimpose this on anything. If you're a life coach, it doesn't matter what type of a coach we are. We can superimpose this because we're all, I suppose, working within specific systems. And when those systems aren't listening to the audience, leadership does emerge. So think of the space that you work in and what are the systems like within it. This could be your own clinic. What would you like to change? Are you brave enough to pull forward a change? Do you see that something does need to change? And if so, what's holding you back from changing it? Is it because you feel that it's scary, or are you stepping outside your scope of practice, which we would never do? Um, so I would challenge you to think about that. If you want to become a leader and known for what you do, what is the gap that you can make better? Okay, what is the gap that you can drive? What is the hill that you'll stand on? And that's the conviction part. Because if there's something that we've heard the saying, I'll die on this hill, and I will die happily on the hill of trying to make it a better system for women going through health or life challenges, because we deserve it. But what is the conviction that you have? Because that will elevate how you approach your work. It will absolutely lead you into that leadership role as well. So what's missing? What don't you like? What needs to change in the world that you're inhabiting? And is there a way for you to step into that leadership role and begin change? Um, so why did leadership in women's health emerge as necessary? Let's go back to it, because the system built to support them often doesn't listen. Okay. So if we think of the woman who is going through maybe a fertility challenge, or maybe pregnancy worries, or menopause, perimenopause. Menopause is only one day. Perimenopause is that lead up that we talk about. Um, we're often, those systems are often not there, and I'm going to show you kind of what a system could look like. Those systems often aren't there. So leadership is needed. Somebody needs to lead the charge of, we have to do something better. We have to do things better. And no better way than coaching. And I'm telling you something, within our clinical coach, and I'll come back to the word clinical because this is an important one to talk about when we talk about leadership. But we have, like, inside our program, I've trained everybody from IVF practitioners, all the way over to teachers and HR managers, and the woman who has lived experience of maybe fertility challenges or endometriosis or PCOS. And she has come through a system and she has said, oh my God, there was no help whatsoever. So she's the woman that we want to support. Okay. Excuse me. And she's also the woman inside the program. And for the woman inside the program who has no knowledge of coaching, let me tell you, the minute they start to experience the power of a coaching session, they're like, oh my goodness. We have a new group in now from October, and I'm thinking in particular of two women. One who is a physiotherapist, and she brought somebody to our student clinics who was also a physiotherapist, so very much in that medical model. And by the time we got to the end of the student clinic, where we ran through a coaching session with this physiotherapist, and she came up the end, she was like, what has just happened? How have I gained so much clarity? How have I understood my issue and my problem so clearly when I've been battling to try and understand it for years? This was a life decision. This wasn't actually a health decision for this lady. We were practicing our coaching skills in the clinic that evening. But when they experienced a coaching session and could see the power of it, they were both, and they're in the medical model, saying, why is this not part of what we offer women? And I'm like, well, that is why we are teaching this, because it needs to become part of it. So I just want to bring you to the word clinical. And this will give you an example of how crunchy leadership feels until you get used to it, and until you wear the shoes for a while and you feel, no, this is where I'm staying, and this is that hill that I'm going to stay on. So when it came to naming our program, the Women's Health Clinical Coach, when it came to naming it, there was the word clinical was jumping around inside my head for a number of reasons. We teach clinical understanding, so we teach physiology. Okay, at a very deep level actually. So we teach physiology. We teach clinical reasoning, which means with everything that is presented in front of us, with all of the physiology tools we have available to us, what type of a clinical coaching prescription do I formulate for this client? And then to wrap it up in a fabulous bow, we teach what we now call clinical coaching, which we as a collective here as part of the IAPC&M would call coaching. So our coaching skills, our coaching capabilities. So we teach all of that so that we can support at the deepest level. So then the word clinical coaching, the word clinical simply had to come before the word coaching. And I couldn't think of a way around it until I sat back and I said, why are you so afraid, Leah, of putting the word clinical in front of this name? And it was because clinical is very much the word that we use when we think of that medical world. And we think of, the clinical teams, the multidisciplinary teams, we think of all of that when we think medicine. And I'm like, we are not, what I train is we don't diagnose. We are insistent that it is medical assessment first, and then you can come to us. So why did I hesitate with the word clinical? Because I felt that it would be perceived, incorrectly, or I felt it could be perceived as a bit of an affront, perhaps, or a bit standing outside scope, until I said, no, it has got to be there, because the women coming to us are women who are in the middle of a medical journey, or they have experienced some medical issues. They're in the medical world, they're in the clinical world, and we need to show them that we're actually part of that as well with coaching. So clinical. So I had to step forward as a leader. I had to step right into my CEO shoes and say, Leah, do you step back from this or do you step into it? And I was like, if I want to lead the cause of getting better care for women, then I have to step into what feels uncomfortable. So that's one part of leadership, is going to the places that feel uncomfortable and that you might feel you don't um deserve a space, not deserve, but that you don't, maybe that the space needs to be earned differently. I don't know what way to actually word it in this moment, but I do know that it felt uncomfortable. But I also know that I knew instinctively inside me that that word simply had to be there. And now that it's there, nothing is going to take it away from me. We put it in for trademark, for goodness sake. So that'll just show you. So that conviction that it needed to be there, um, I suppose, again, elevated my thought processing and elevated my ability to really, I suppose, think so deeply about, why does it need to be there? Why do I want it to be there? Until it became a complete conviction that I was like, it's not coming out. And that's leadership. There will be people who will ask me, why is the word clinical there? And I'll have no problem explaining it to them. And I suppose it's there as well because we do aim to work alongside medical care and medical support, because it's missing hugely for women. And I feel so honored and I feel so blessed that I have the tools of coaching. I understand coaching and I can see how beneficial coaching is. And I will talk you through a case study in a little bit. Um, and I'm very blessed as well to the IAPC&M who as a collective give you this strength of courage beneath what you're creating. So, and when all of this comes together, then your leadership gets very strong, and it does get difficult to knock it, but we stay without the ego as well at the same time. So I just want to give you a brief overview, and I'm conscious of my time, of what clinical coaching integrates. Functional physiology education. So this is our clinical reasoning. This is where we look at evidence-informed health literacy. Every single bit of information we bring forward is always evidence-based. It's always research-based. It's not anecdotal. So you'll start to see, and I'll show you briefly at the end, the difference between health coaching as such and clinical coaching. Because a lot of women coming to us will have had medical or life experiences that can be traumatic. And we were very much trauma aware within our program. We're very much aware of the next one, which is nervous system regulation as well. Because nervous system dysregulation, if ever you were to learn the physiology behind it, it has a huge impact on the workings of the body. But not only that, it has a huge impact on our ability to think clearly. So that's why clinical coaching can be so vital for some women if they've nervous system activation, because not only are we aware of that, so we know how to step down from sessions or how to step back from sessions or help our clients step back from sessions. We never need to know your trauma. We're not a therapist. That's not our role at all. But we need to be aware that trauma might be present and that nervous system activation might be present, so that we can understand that not only is it going to have an impact on physiology, but it's also going to have an impact on your ability to make decisions and your ability to think clearly, your ability to think of the questions that need to be answered for your situation. How well placed is coaching for the woman who can't think clearly? How well placed is it? I mean, I'll never forget one of our IVF consultants, a woman who joined us because she said, I need these coaching skills. I need to be able to coach my IVF clients. Um, because it was missing. And some other, but I'll pause because I will mention something a little bit later. We also look at behavioral and lifestyle medicine. This is part of our clinical reasoning, really. So we teach this within a very strong scope of practice. And this is where we find the benefit of our coaching skills as well. Because as a nutritionist, because I'm a registered nutritionist, and as a nutritionist, I, for years, was giving out beautiful, beautiful protocols and programs and giving myself a pat on the back and thinking this is wonderful. Never once thinking, okay, how do I support the woman to join what I've given her clinically with her life? And there was this massive gap, but now that gap is filled with coaching. So I'm going to give you this information, but that's only information. It doesn't stop there. What I need to do is I need to support you now to figure out what do you want to incorporate into your life? How are you going to do it? What supports might you need? So I'm deepening the woman's, I suppose, ability to support her physiology by deepening her ability to engage with it. And I do all of that through my clinical coaching and through my coaching skills and my coaching capabilities. And then scope of practice. So we have to be very clear about our scope of practice because we're non-medical. We are coaches, but we have this other angle as well, which is our clinical aspect. We don't diagnose ever. Um, so why this methodology and why now? Again, and I know I'm repeating this slightly, but it's because we are often underdiagnosed, undertreated, and undersupported. Okay, within the standard care models that are around at the moment. And clinical coaching was designed to fill that gap. And it was to provide structure, support between appointments, maybe before appointments, perhaps across the full arc of that women's health journey. So some of the stuff here under-supported, underdiagnosed, undertreated, often we have to support women to create a plan to bring their requests to the medical team. One big one is often thyroid. We know, we teach that the basic thyroid testing that we can get done through our GP doesn't go deep enough, and it doesn't show the true function of the thyroid. And this can be really detrimental to female hormones and to hormone health and to pregnancy and fertility. It can be absolutely catastrophic. So we educate and we teach on that, and then if they do want to talk about it to their medical team, but often maybe have a fear of approaching it, we build through coaching. We build an approach program with them, or we support them to build an approach program. And something as simple as what would you like to say to your GP? If you can imagine now that you've come out of your GP's office, you've had this conversation, how are you feeling? How does that compare to how you feel right now? And what are the steps that might need to be put in place in order to have that conversation? Will we write out the conversation? Will we literally write out a script? So this is how we approach it with our coaching. That's an example of how we approach it with our coaching. And I'll give you, we talk about the gaps here. I just want to give you a quick example of one client. So we'll step into a case study just very, very briefly. And I want you to imagine a woman who has gone through, this is a recent case study, a woman who has gone through fertility treatment, and it has failed. Okay. And she's gone through a few rounds of fertility treatment before this, but her most recent one has failed again. And she's very demoralized. And I suppose the medical approach then is, when do we go next? Do we go next? And the fertility clinics, some are very, very aware of not pushing forward to the next run of treatment. Other clinics they know that there's really no evidence to show that we should pause. So, it should come down to the patient, and it often does. But there's nothing to help her decide. But the clinical coach, the women's health clinical coach can, because we can sit and we can like, I'm thinking this particular client now who's at the stage that her physiology, there's a lot of work to be done there, and we'll be able to do that too. But she doesn't know what happens next. What should I do next? Coaching is so well placed there. What do I do next? Let's sit and let's strategize, and let's coach you to figure out where you want to go next. And from there, we can help you strategize. And from there, you can, we'll strategize if you've made a decision. And I'll help you make that decision because my coaching skills will help you get there. so that I'm not telling you what to do, your medical team isn't telling you what to do. You have made a strong decision on what you want to do. From there, I can help you strategize. As a clinical coach, I'm an educator as well. And if you decide that you want to get body ready, we have skills for that as well, because that's all wrapped up. So you can see the massive gap for her was, I don't know how to progress. I don't know what to do next. What should I do? And then there's people, well, you should do this and you should do that. And everybody has an opinion then, but it has to come. We know as coaches, it has to come from the person themselves. So this is one of the reasons why I had to step into that leadership role and pull this type of profession out from nowhere and say, right, okay, it's not good enough. We cannot have this woman sitting in this limbo, unable to answer questions for herself, getting advice from everybody around her and not knowing what to do. We need someone who can step into that gap, but she's missing. We're going to build her and create her. We're going to call her a women's health clinical coach. So, and one of our, just because we're talking about fertility, one of our lecturers who was a director of some of the clinics here in Ireland, he says that he knows the patients, he completely advocates women's health and fertility coaching. And he says he knows the patients who need it. And he said often, across the board, if you were to offer all of these patients free goals of IVF, the majority who have come to this particular point where they need our support, the majority will say no, because it's not about the finances at that stage when they've hit that outer boundary. At that stage, it's about the emotional support, which coaching can bring to the table. We're not stepping into psychology. We're not analyzing your trauma. We're not analyzing your situation. We're helping you move from here to here. Okay. And I can help you move from here to here. I don't need to know anything of your medical background. I'm never going to analyze it with you. I'm never going to look back and wonder what went wrong. I'm going to help you go from here to here. I don't know what to do to I've now made a decision. Now I know what to do. We can action forth from there then. So let me see. So clinical coaching is structured. It's not psychotherapy. We look at physiology. It's not medical diagnosis. We look at emotional and behavioral support with regards to that movement. We don't replace clinical care. And we can move together as a care partnership in that bigger medical field. But we will never step outside our practice boundaries. And that's really, really important. So let's have a look at the journey. So, sorry, no, that writing is a little bit out there. Let me pull it up so we can read it. So, clinical or personal referral. So, anybody can refer themselves in for clinical coaching, but if there's a medical issue, it has to have seen medical eyes first. And then we combine that with active coaching. And then we can close the care loop. That closes the care loop. That there's not this missing edge. Now, of course, as a leader, I know that I can go into any clinic and present this, and they'll say, there's the door. Thank you very much. I can go into the next clinic and they can say, sit at the table. We need to talk about this. So it's not easy to try and build an integrative model. And that's exactly what Women's Health Network are trying to do. We're trying to build an integrative model. And it's clunky and it's chunky and it's uncomfortable at times. But my goodness, the rewards when you start to see it working, and the rewards when you see women saying, oh my goodness, thank God. And the rewards when you know that their women want this, because they wouldn't be studying in our academy if they didn't. Because the women coming into us, yes, some of them are IVF practitioners, some of them are other medical practitioners, some are mothers, some are teachers, some are whatever the case may be. The majority, 99%, have lived experience of a women's health issue. And they've come to the end of the issue, or it's been resolved, or they've come to a place of peace within it, which allows them to think, I want to work in this field because I don't want any other woman going through what I went through myself. Actually, that's how Women's Health Network was born to begin with. So we've only a couple of minutes left. So
Liadh, may I ask you a
yes,
question?
of course.
Because it's very, very inspiring and educative. And I'm thinking from with two hats. If I were to have two hats, if I were to be a coach that I want to explore this clinical coaching to get certified, right?
Mm-hmm.
what would I bring more to my clients that will, in this world that is quite competitive, and in this world of coaching that is very very busy, but also for, let's say, executives, people in corporations, entrepreneurs, they are watching us now, so women, right? And why would they go to a clinical coaching and get their coaching instead of just using AI?
Ooh, no, that's a good question. Well, first of all, because AI gives out wrong information sometimes. And I would never ever research on AI. AI is great for bringing in information, ideas, that type of thing, but I would never research my medical or health issues on AI unless I want to understand the basics of it. But I'll start with the coach and what would the coach get from this? So it's a two-pronged approach. So often when we train as coaches, we decide we want to pick a niche. So we were imagining that the woman who wants to train as a clinical coach wants to become a women's health coach. Okay. We have the word clinical in there. You might just say a women's health coach. So what you would expect from, so you can come from any background. You don't need prior experience. You don't need, we teach you everything. But I suppose the main thing is that you would expect anybody who has their niche name in their job title to have the deepest level of knowledge about that topic. So, for example, if you were going to a cardiovascular coach, you would expect them to know heart health inside out and to help me step back and walk back for my heart, maybe scare that I've just had. Okay, so if you were with the cardiologist and they said, I want you to go to our cardio coach or our cardiovascular health coach, you'd be like, right, okay, they'll tell me what to do, what not to do. They'll explain everything to me. Wonderful. It's the exact same for your women's health clinical coach. That we often come out of the diagnosis of PCOS or endometriosis or whatever it is, and we're told, look, this is what you have. And we don't know. We don't know. We don't understand what it means. We might be diagnosed with adenomyosis or infertility, unexplained infertility. You're like, I don't understand. What am I supposed to do now? What do I do next? So you can step into the room of somebody who is trained to know everything about women's health so they can educate and answer your questions. So that whatever questions you might have, they will be able to either find the answer for you or give it to you straight up. So that's one hat. Then we might have the woman who is, I cannot make a decision. The fertility and menopause and endometriosis, actually, they would be the big heavy hitters when it comes to I'm stuck and I don't know how to move forward. I know so many women, and they've come into clinic who are in that stage of perimenopause and going through the latter stages of perimenopause that we would probably call menopause generally, we'd say, and they cannot function at work. They're saying, should I take a sabbatical? Should I stop working? You know, I'm having hot flushes in the middle of my meetings, or it's just awful. I can't sleep. I'm exhausted. The whole lot is going on for me. So they would step into the office, we'll say, of a women's health clinical coach in order to explain where your symptoms are coming from. Look for drivers of those symptoms. Okay, this is more of a clinical hat, and then help you make that plan around it of how you're going to live within this stage of your life cycle. So that's the person that would step into us. And the same for endometriosis and anything else. So we take a complete 360 viewpoint, but we help you plan and make decisions within that bubble, we'll say. Why would I be sitting here and not researching? I would be researching if I was watching this. I'd be on AI asking questions 100%. But I would always keep in mind that some of the answers could be incorrect. And second of all, I would always put together the fact that AI can't help me progress out of just giving me knowledge. And often we are desperately in need of more information. We're desperately in need of, I have a pain point, I have a problem right now I'll give you an example of myself. This all was born from my own fertility journey. And I remember stepping out of two places, the fertility clinic, who told me, here's your medication, and this is what you do. I had 10 minutes with a pharmacist. I came out and I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what to do. But I had a friend who was a fertility nurse, and she sat with me for 2 hours and she taught me through everything. She fertility coached me. And another situation, going into a place to buy baby bottles if I couldn't breastfeed. And I said, what bottle should I get? And they said, well, it depends on what size you want. And I felt so stupid because I didn't understand what they meant, and I left crying. Now, what I would have wanted in that instance was someone to coach me through all of that and support me and educate me and find the information for me. So that's a women's health clinical coach. Now, I might also say that was wonderful information. I'm going to go for surgery for my endometriosis. And I'm like, right, okay. No, because I'm a clinical coach that has clinical understanding and clinical information and protocols that I can give you, because we're also a health coach. And let me get your body ready for surgery. So let me up the ante and get you to that stage. And I suppose, like, I'm a mad woman for trademarking. I've just received the trademark of the registered name in for one woman, one county, one mission, which is going to be one of our slogans, which means that in every community of women, we should have this woman, we should have this wise woman who can support the women around them, those women in their community, and to educate them, to help them move on, to understand that there might be trauma involved, so we can do it gently, and to bring them from, I'm stuck, I don't understand, this is an awful medical situation, my body is involved, that might often feel violating, who knows what I have to go through with regards to tests. Nobody's explaining them to me, I don't understand them. I went through one test during my fertility journey, which was so painful, and I was awake that I vomited straight after getting off the table. Nobody prepares you for this. And this is where this massive gap is, that there's this massive gap where women are just put into a system that isn't built for them, because there's nobody to hold them within that system. But a women's health clinical coach is the woman who's going to hold you. And I'm creating her because she's missing, and she needs to be created and plugged into the system. And my leadership role is to figure out how can I get her plugged in. So I get very passionate about it. I hope that answered that,
Yes.
Catalina. Brilliant, brilliant.
Yes, absolutely.
Good, brilliant. So I just have a couple of slides left. So there is health coaching, of course, built into it. And then the more clinical aspect comes in when we teach under the lens of things like functional medicine. So we teach the core of nutrition without stepping into nutritional therapy or nutritional shoes. And we teach lifestyle medicine. We bring it all together. So it is different to health coaching, of course, but there are threads that are very similar across the two as well. So let me see. And the role of, I suppose, clinical leaders would be to look at things like clinical coaching and say, okay, are there gaps in the current models where their patients are falling through appointments, or their patients are coming out of clinics feeling, that their full needs haven't been met. And, if we can get to the stage of talking with clinical leaders, then we can get to the stage of building a stronger care team. And that stronger care team is there to support the European Fertility Society, their Fertility Care Awards, the ones you talked about at the very, very beginning. They're all about, across Europe, building strong care team infrastructures. And that puts the patient at the center, and that cares for them in a 360 viewpoint as well, so that we have that emotional care built in. And anything that wants to push something along, it needs the right credentials, it needs the right training. That's why we went through the IAPC&M for our accreditation, because we could get such a high level of accreditation. And that shows, this third set of eyes has looked at what we're talking about, and they've said, well, actually, yes, what Leah is talking about is in there, So let me see now, because I'm conscious of the time. So clinical coaching as leadership translates medical language into lived understanding, prepares women to enter appointments informed and regulated. So we've given them information, we've helped them regulate that nervous system. It encourages appropriate referral. It names when something doesn't feel right. So if you come out and you say, I don't want to say it to my doctor or the medical team, but something just, I think there is something wrong with the thyroid, for example. We help them name it, and we never diagnose, we help them advocate for themselves. As our clinical hat, we help document patterns of dysfunction that the body is telling us about, and we strengthen women to ask better questions when the time comes. Here are all of the things that we teach with regards to the physiology. And you can see there's so much that interacts in the body that can drive these symptoms that put us in front of that medical world, that leaves us maybe exposed sometimes, where coaching can help us feel less exposed. Um, I suppose really it's about holding the systems accountable a little bit, that we will never undermine or replace anybody, but we do need accountability, and for as a collective, for I suppose us all stand forward to say, absolutely, we need more structure around women's health. Um, so the evidence says that there's 72% better adherence when patients are supported with health coaching. They engage 3 times more consistently with care plans between clinical visits, and there's a 40% reduced burnout of clinicians when there's structured coaching around what can be offered. So I mean that's huge. So the key takeaways, because we're wrapping up now, I think we're close to our end. The key takeaways really, I suppose the main key takeaway for myself is that clinical coaching is structured. Coaching needs a place at the table when it comes to health. It 100% does. We know, we can see that that's already creeping into the psyche. We know that some insurance companies are already starting to ensure that. This is exactly what we want to see. We want it going higher and higher up the ladder. But women, we need our own intervention. We need our own approach to this as well, because what we experience is exceptionally different. And the medical models were built on male physiology and the male approach, and not the female approach. And that is why sometimes when we talk about cardiovascular health, we talk about, the symptoms for women for cardiovascular health are, they can be quite different to males. But that's because our understanding of cardiovascular health was studied on the male body. So the medical system was built on studying the male body. It was only a couple of years ago that, for example, period tampons were tested on real blood only in 2023. So, I mean, that's shocking. So for a model to be based on males only, and for all research really up to this point to have gone through looking at males, there's a huge gap in our knowledge about how we can support women within that medical system. So I'm at the end. If anybody wants any more information or to follow me, womenshealthnetwork.co.uk is my handle across everything. It's Liadh Fitzgerald on LinkedIn. Womenshealthnetwork.co.uk is our website. You might be interested in this program. You will see my TMs, as I say, I'm a mad woman for the trademarks. We also have a trauma-informed coaching program. And for anybody who already works within women's health and you're looking for more supports, we have a wonderful practice vault that's opening in May, which will have practice sets within it, which is your handouts. It's not a teaching space, it's a space for client handouts and paperwork. So please have a good look around if you're interested. And other than that, as we'd say, shin shin, which means that's that. We're finished. And thank you very much. And I'll stop sharing now.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much. And I can see your passion. You're living and, living each second with so much passion, and it's your conviction. It's coming across very powerfully. I was wondering, for those people, those coaches that will join your program, how does coaching change the identity of health practitioners, you think, and not just only their skill set?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the main ways it changes their identity is it makes them feel and look, and we perceive them as maybe being more accessible, that they understand what we can feel because they're like, okay, well, I can coach you as well. I have these skills that soften down that very direct medical approach. Now, that direct medical approach is absolutely necessary. Life and death, I wouldn't have my children if it wasn't for it. So we've the utmost respect there. But then there's this layer that's missing. So if I went to, there's a fabulous functional medicine doctor that I know of here in Ireland, and I know that coaching is part of it. And I'm like, this is just superb because they get it. They understand that I can't go from I'm sick and scared to and I'll take this medication. There's this big journey in the middle. So if you are a medic and if you have coaching, or if you have a medical clinic or setup and you have coaching in there, I'm like, oh, I can already feel my nervous system starting to relax. I can already feel that I'm in a space where maybe there won't be as much trauma maybe attached, because there's often a lot attached when we're worried about our bodies. So,
Yeah. And especially, you know, I'm also in my 50s. So in that period, and I know I'm a health and integrative coach myself, and working with my clients, executive clients, on leadership, but also the health, and then this time of women 40 to 60, it's very
yeah,
intense, and
it's
so many
very,
levels. And in the same time, we are in our prime, right? Where
yeah,
we are, and we have aging parents, we have children that are growing, and teenagers moving out of the house and everything. So it's very important to get the right support. I can tell you that
yeah,
there is no client that I have women very good in their work and senior in their areas, and they go through challenges with their health, and there is no support because
yeah,
we know what we need. But women are more taken into consideration. I see also in the Netherlands in the medicine, and so we are getting there. And initiatives like yours are very, very important
yeah,
in this space. And you know, I was just, because we can visualize, we can envision together, if clinical coaching becomes the global standard, how would healthcare look different in 10 years? Let's end
wow.
on a
Let's
beautiful
end on a
note, and
high.
yes, on a high.
Oh, let's end on a
Yes.
if nothing can fail moment. So if clinical coaching became worldwide, I would say that everybody would have to respect the scope of practice. And what I mean by that is that the coaching part could not be diluted. That would be because you could see if something was sucked into an existing paradigm, that it could be diluted, and that the true reason for it having been born in the first place was to fill this particular gap. So it would need to stay as strong as it is, but how women would feel supported and cared for. There would be less worry, less anxiety. We would have deeper trust in the systems. We would have deeper trust in the teams that are supporting us, and we would have that go-to point when we feel, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't think. I don't know what to do. And oh my God, yes, I've made a decision. I feel so confident in this decision. Nobody told me what to do, but I got there myself. I got there in the end. And I've now stepping out of that medical journey, looking back at it saying, that was such a positive experience. That's what it could look like. So
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much.
thank you.
Looking forward to our next chats together, and wishing you an open path in educating practitioner and raising the level of leadership and the quality in the healthcare
Wonderful.
worldwide.
Thank you, Catalina. And
Thank you
thank you,
very,
everyone
very
who
much.
watched.